right, let's take this one back. Okay, I hope you can all hear me now. And okay, so my name is Matthias Lusbeck, and I'll be presenting our work on hands-on, hands-off, gaze-assisted bimanual in 3D interaction. This work was achieved in collaboration with my co-authors from Aarhus University, Google Research, and Lancaster University. Similar to physical reality, object manipulation in XR often involves both hands in asymmetrical roles. That said, let's try a little something with the audience. So everyone who writes with their right hand, please raise your hand. Okay. Everyone who writes with their left hand, please raise your hand. Not that many. Well, according to Yves Guillard, we actually use both hands when writing. One hand for the actual writing task, and the other hand to support the writing hand. Often the non-dominant hand performs larger movements, such as rotating or moving the piece of paper, to make writing with the dominant hand easier. As such, the dominant hand performs smaller and more precise manipulations. Recent advances in interaction have leveraged the user's gaze to naturally extend manual input, enabling indirect interaction through hand gestures, such as gaze plus pinch interaction, where you can simply look at an object in space, perform a pinch gesture, and then any hand movements are redirected to the object. This video here showcases bimanual interaction with both direct and indirect gestures. The user grabs a star-like object and extrudes points by interacting however they wish. Users can seamlessly transition their hands between direct and indirect gestures simply by moving their hand closer to or further from the object. But how does Guillard's asymmetric bimanual theory apply to 3D interaction with direct and indirect gaze-assisted hand interaction? How do these indirect gestures impact bimanual interactions, and what happens when either hand can be direct or indirect? To address this, we explore application designs that exploit asymmetric eye-hand interactions and present a user study that compares the atomic combinations in different modes of acquisition and rotation with the non-dominant hand and different modes of acquisition and manipulation with the dominant hand. The following shows 3 applications of bimanual direct hands-on and indirect hands-off interaction modes, where either of the hands or both hands can be hands-on or hands-off. In indirect interaction, the non-dominant hand directly holds and rotates an object, while the dominant hand efficiently manipulates parts of the object using gaze plus pinch. When the non-dominant hand is direct, users can directly grasp objects and intuitively set the reference frame for the dominant hand to perform successive gaze-assisted indirect manipulations. Here, the user's non-dominant hand easily rotates an object to bring parts into view, while the user's gaze naturally falls on the visually distinct parts, after which the dominant hand efficiently acquires those parts indirectly. In indirect plus direct interaction, the non-dominant hand indirectly holds and rotates the object through gaze plus pinch, while the dominant hand directly manipulates parts of the object. When the non-dominant hand is indirect, the user can benefit from occlusion-free reference setting, allowing the dominant hand to easily manipulate any part of the object currently facing the user. In indirect plus indirect interaction, both hands use indirect manipulation via gaze plus pinch. While fully gaze-assisted indirect interaction is limited to sequential selection, simultaneous manipulation is still supported. Users can quickly switch the reference object by simply looking and can move objects between reference frames quickly and occlusion-free. To evaluate the different interaction modes, we developed a 2-task user study around rotation and manipulation, namely the single and continuous tasks. Both tasks involve 3 major steps. First, acquiring a cube in front of the user with the non-dominant hand, preparing the cube for the dominant hand, and manipulating points on the cube to a target position relative to the cube using the dominant hand. Let's make this play again. The single task focuses on rapid one-off acquisition, preparation, and manipulation, providing high internal validity. The user acquires the cube and performs a single manipulation, whereafter the cube resets to be in front of the user. In contrast, the continuous task introduces carryover and clutching behavior. The user acquires the cube and freely performs manipulations on each of the sides, and the cube resets only when all 6 sides have been manipulated. First of all, we did not find any differences in overall trial completion time. However, as expected, we found that indirect acquisition was faster, and we found that indirect interactions reduce hand movements, mostly due to gaze-assisted interaction, as prior works have found as well. Interestingly, however, we found that direct preparation, or reference frame setting, was faster and preferred, suggesting difficulty with indirect gestures for rotation. Especially the indirect plus direct combination was found more difficult. Users mentioned difficulties in comprehending the indirect rotation. We believe that the indirect preparation lacked something called pre-shaping. Pre-shaping in our context is the act of preemptively shaping your hand to increase the available interaction space. As seen on the left video with direct gestures, this comes naturally as learned throughout our lives. However, as seen on the right video, we observed that when using indirect gestures, our participants did not perform this pre-shaping, instead acquiring the cube in a neutral position, limiting movement. Importantly, however, some users did then later figure out how to do it. We also observed a difference in user behavior between fully direct and fully indirect bimanual interaction modes. As seen on the left, when using the fully direct interaction, some users would sit very focused while interacting. In contrast, when using the fully indirect interaction, as seen on the right, some users would reposition to be more comfortable while computing the tasks. So in sum, we found direct and indirect gestures in 3D interaction to align with Geert's asymmetric bimanual theory, except for the troublesome indirect plus direct interaction mode. We found direct and indirect trade-offs between the speeds of interaction subtasks and interaction comfort and the pre-shaping. And we believe our applications showcase different benefits of direct and indirect combinations, and we recommend giving users the choice to interact however they desire. In the future, we believe it could be interesting to explore how the size of objects and their dimensions impact user behavior, performance and behavior. For example, non-uniform shapes may provide more references for rotation. Finally, while we support seamless transitioning, we did not fully explore this aspect in a user study. Perhaps users may even prefer explicit toggles for interaction modes. That's my talk.
Hi, I'm Taejun from KAIST, and thank you for the great work. I was trying to, so these techniques were explored across mainly in a single task, which is grabbing it with one hand and manipulating with the other hand. So I was trying to think of other useful scenarios that these techniques can be usefully used in more general and other practical applications like a website browsing or some whatever. Like, do you have any thoughts on this?
So in general, usually these indirect gestures are more thought of as being useful for far interaction, where you would not necessarily need to be able to grab them, right? And you could, in that case, do on the Apple Vision Pro, you might have seen that you can grab it with gaze and pinch, and then you can bring it close, and then you can start doing the direct as well. You could use it for something like that, just bringing stuff close to you and then transitioning into the direct, if that is what you desire. Or you can also decide to, for example, I believe our tasks or our study showcases a scenario where you want to probably have easy rotation of something, but you don't really need that high or that precision for the manipulation, so you can relax more one part of the body, or you can relax the other part. So these hybrid interaction modes, we believe, could serve some purpose in relaxing some parts of the interaction.
Yeah, I think that makes me think of a kind of a smart home like cases, like where the augmented like virtual parts are like spread it in the space and just bring it like Thank you very much.
Otherwise, I will ask a quick question. So you talked about the clutching and the pre-shaping, which I think is a pretty interesting finding in terms of how users behave. So even though objectively they have to do the same movement, but they are doing very different things depending on the condition. And so you kind of mentioned that they somewhat got used to it, but how would you say, what would be your approach now, knowing this, to mitigate this, to make them learn this faster, or introduce some rotation gains, or what would your approach be for mitigating this?
So we have multiple kind of ideas for future work, and I won't go too much into detail because we are working on those currently. But I'll start with the rotational gain. We tried it out, and it, at least in my experience and in my colleagues' experience, adding rotational gain seems to make it kind of more difficult to comprehend, because then the rotation is no longer mapped to what you're doing with your hand. Of course, you can rotate quicker to some direction, but you'll then have to rotate back as well all the time. It can be suitable, for example, if you need to rotate very far around. So you could tune the CD gain to, if you really want to do a quick one, you could just snap your hand and it'll rotate all the way around. Or if you do normal interactions, it'll be one-to-one, right? So you could tune it to be exactly what you want in specific cases. About other ways, you could actually also, Meta had this at some point, they deleted it from the SDK, but showing your virtual hand on the object, even though it's far away, basically redirecting your hand to the object. That could add in back some of these affordances that you have from the direct in VR of your hand on the object. So could potentially give more hints of where your hand is relative to the object and allow you to do this pre-shaping that you're used to, potentially.
All right, let's thank Matthias again.